Why, hello there, beautiful chaos gremlins. Welcome back to Engineering Chaos, a podcast where normally my co host and I will talk about life as female engineers, give advice to those coming up behind us, and continue to talk about corporate America as it continues to screw us all. However, similar to the last 2 weeks, I am by myself again. I think, hopefully, this is the last week that I'm by myself, and we're also going to ignore the fact that I am still partially in cosplay. This week is a whole very weird week for me. You are getting this on Tuesday after I've already gone to my conference, but for me, it is Wednesday the week before. And I usually get into cosplay on Fridays, but I can't do that this week because I'll be at the conference. So I had to get into cosplay in the middle of the week and I don't feel like showering. So I just left my makeup on because for once I'm not completely body painted red or white or whatever other colors. For a couple weeks, I get a break from that. And I just have to do regular makeup, but it is heavier because I'm playing characters. So I have green makeup from my Buttercup cosplay. Anyways, today is going to be a day. We're going to do another Am I the Asshole episode, as the title will probably tell you. But some of these are more engineering stories. I found a lot of interesting kind of things hanging out on Reddit when it comes to Am I the Asshole? Just engineers being arrogant assholes, that kind of stuff. Questions from engineers about the industry and things like that. So we're going to dive into those today. So if you're on the long run with me, crack your caffeine and let's get going. All right. So first up is, have you ever regretted becoming an engineer? I wouldn't say regret's the right word. Hey there, industrial engineering students here. It seems like, at least at my school, a lot of the students here don't actually want to be engineers. They were just always smart and good at math and always had teachers and counselors tell them, you should be an engineer. So they went with it. I started to take a hard look at myself and I realized that I kind of fit this description. Although I'm genuinely interested in engineering, I didn't even consider majoring in something like math, statistics, physics. I just knew I wanted to be an engineer. Do any of you regret becoming engineers? If so, what do you wish you were? I'm seriously thinking about switching to statistics, and since I'm still a freshman, now is better time than ever. Well, you are on a better path than I am because I didn't have that realization till I was a senior. Dear OP, do I regret being an engineer now that I am one? No, I wouldn't say regret's the right word. Would I have done something else had people continuously not told me that being an engineer was the only way I was going to make money with the skills that I had? Probably. But I don't regret it because being an engineer brought me my co host. Being an engineer brought me this podcast and all the topics that we talk about. I don't know that I would be as interested in the tech industry had I gone a different route. I've always kind of tinkered in that world, but I wasn't deep diving into it like I am now. So I can understand how, especially in school, it may feel like everyone's just there because someone along the way told them, hey, you're good at math. We've even talked about this. We were good at math, so we ended up as engineers because we wanted to make money. So I can understand it. But as someone who's been in the industry for 6 plus almost 7 years now, which isn't a lot in comparison to people who retire as engineers, but it's enough to get a fair amount of gravel under my feet. I don't know where I was going with that comparison, but you won't necessarily regret it. You may not be as happy as you would be in other industries, depending on how you feel about your classes and things like that. But I don't know that you'll regret it, especially if you're money driven. If you're not money driven, then hell yeah, you're a freshman. Change. You can find your own path in life. Obviously, this was posted 4 years ago, so it doesn't really matter. But anyone who might be having a similar thought process of have you ever regretted it? No. Will I look for other opportunities to not do this the rest of my life? Yes. Do I regret it? No. And I feel like my co host would say the same thing. She doesn't necessarily regret it, but if an opportunity to get out arise, she probably would. So, that being said, I think that's a pretty simple question. A lot of people in this comment thread said they don't regret it and that there are different types of people in the industry. And being an engineer, you can go into all different types of industries, whether it's medical, whether it's banking, whether it's design, whether it's teaching. And that is a very true part about engineering. There are very few degrees out there that can take you in multiple different ways, and engineering is one of them. I personally think law is also kind of one of them because there's so many different areas of law. But engineering, you can shape your career to some extent. In my experience, if you start in one particular version of the industry, it'll be harder for you to jump. So if you start in tech, it will be harder for you to jump to maybe something like defense. Or if you start in hospital management, it might be harder for you to jump to tech. Once you're kind of in there, each individual pipeline has its own unique kind of rules and regulations and standards and things like that, so that it makes it a little bit more difficult to jump from piece to piece just because you have an engineering title. Usually they're going to want experience in that version of the industry. Once you cut up into those higher roles, it's going to be really hard to switch between the different industries. That's just my experience as someone who's tried to switch around to the different industries. I haven't had a ton of luck trying to switch, and that's been pretty common from talking to friends of mine and things like that. But there's a lot of people in this thread just basically saying, I don't really regret it, but I always have the opportunity to change it because of the degree I got, whereas something like statistics might be a little bit more in the pipeline. You're kind of tunneled into very specific areas if you go that way. All right, we've got a lot, so I'm going to try and speed through some of these that are more advice and not as funny. Current engineers, how did you beat the arrogance? My co-host violently disagrees with me on this one, but I am fully convinced that you have to be an arrogant prick to be an engineer, including myself. I have a lot of inflated self-importance, and my husband calls me out and checks me out. Not checks me out. My husband calls me out and knocks me down a level all the time when I start getting that way. I start becoming cocky, and when I am performing well, and this is true with most engineers, not all, but most, when they're performing well, they turn into cocky little pricks. And this was true in school, and I didn't do as well in school as I'm doing in the workforce. So that's another thing to keep in mind as engineers. You may not be perfect at school, but you might find a niche that you're really good at work. So don't let it take you down just because school's not your strong suit. However, let's read this description. I am currently a freshman engineering student at a relatively large university studying aerospace. It feels like almost every fellow engineering student I talk to, approximately 70%, is an asshole to others for no reason. Does this ever go away? Do you see this in your workplace? How do or did you cope with this? The answer is yes. Do I see it in my workplace? Every damn day. I have dealt with some of the most narcissistic, arrogant dickwads of human beings being an engineer. However, I am seeing it from the perspective of an engineer. You will deal with arrogant dickwads no matter what industry you're in. I personally just feel like it's heightened in the engineering field in comparison to other fields. That might be a me thing. According to my co-host, it is a me thing. But I think a lot of engineers are elitist pricks, including sometimes, but not always, myself. I don't like a lot of my coworkers. And I've said that a couple times on this podcast. Someone said, remember, you aren't talking to engineers, you're talking to freshman university students who think that they're the smartest people in the world. True. However, I experienced this as a full grown adult too. So that can't necessarily be the only problem. I also experienced it with a lot of professors. How I deal with it is really you don't. You kind of just going to come across arrogant pricks. And unfortunately, that's a large majority of who you'll be working with. I don't know if OP was a male or a female, or I don't know because there's no discussion here. However, you're going to experience it more so as femme presenting, in my opinion, than you will as male presenting. That has been my experience. That has been a lot of my friends' experiences. But again, I don't have a dick between my legs, so I can't see it from the male perspective. Someone else in this thread said the classic engineering is the hardest major before, therefore I'm the smartest syndrome. Yep. That is also why a lot of engineers are dickheads, in my opinion. Just drink more. I think on this podcast, and if I haven't, I've definitely had this conversation with my co-host, that I said most engineers are functioning alcoholics. So That doesn't surprise me either in this thread. But there's not a lot of advice that's basically just saying alcohol is the answer, just drink more. Everyone in engineering thinks they know everything and they're arrogant pricks. You just have to put up with it and deal with it. And if you can't put up with it and deal with it, then maybe get out of engineering. It's not the right place for you. It annoys the ever-loving shit out of me, and that's part of the reason I think I'm going to be getting out as soon as I can, or at least I'm going to try to. Because I don't particularly enjoy working with people who think that their shit don't stink. All right, now on to the first Am I the Asshole, which is going to be fun. Am I the asshole for feeling computer engineering subjects are more easier? That's not English. Engineers don't English good. Are more easier than computer science subjects? The answer is purely yes, in my opinion. You are the asshole. I'm not even going to read the description. Well, I'm not going to read it before I say this. You are the asshole, sir, because we are all engineers. Whether our engineer title is computer science, whether our cybersecurity, whether it's acoustics, audio engineering, we are all freaking engineers. We all have to go through some of the same classes, the core subjects, whatever it is. Yes, some majors have it easier. Most don't have to go through partial differential equations. They just have to do differential equations. Some don't even have to take physics 2. I think that would be computer engineering. I don't remember. However, that does not mean they are any less than you. And this goes back to the engineers are arrogant pricks. Just because they didn't take the same subjects doesn't mean they're any less than. They still have an engineering title. They still went through engineering school and suffered just like the rest of us. But for context, I genuinely feel this. There is a lot of math in EC equations. I'm talking about core ECE versus core CS. There's a standard flow, cause and effect, but in computer science subjects, everything is so abstracted. So what? It's very tricky to learn. It's not mechanical like ECE core subjects. Power electronics is core subject and operating systems is core subject for CS. We all know which is tougher to gain perspective. That really depends on who you are, because some people really excel with hardware based things like power electronics, and other people really excel with software based things like operating systems. For me, operating systems would be a lot easier. For my co-host, power electronics would be a lot easier. It really depends. It has nothing to do with the course, but the person taking the course. And this is an elitist mentality to say, oh, operating systems isn't hard. It can get really complicated and abstract. So this kind of mindset, you are the asshole, my dear sir. And there are a lot of people that are agreeing from a high level, hardware is hard. And then someone saying, I swear transistors are black magic. And I agree. Anything in the ECE world is black magic, in my opinion. The failure rates for computer engineering is much higher than computer science at my university. That's just anecdotal, but I've heard the same from many of my friends at other schools. Because computer science and computer engineering are two different curriculums. Computer engineering has to take a lot of the hardware-based things that computer science does. It really just depends. TLDR, I disagree. You're not an asshole for having an opinion. You're a bit of an asshole for assuming everyone feels the same way. There we go. That's kind of what I was thinking. You can have your opinion, but it really, not everyone is going to feel that way. So therefore, you are the asshole, my dear sir. That's an easy one, because that's just an opinion. There shouldn't be a corralling majority. Let's go hate on computer science people because they don't take as hard of a curriculum. I don't fucking know. That's really their choice. Moving on. Am I too sensitive to be in engineering? If you're asking this question, the answer is probably yes. However, to give context, I'm currently interning in this engineering company. And mind you, this is in a women engineering Reddit thread. And this is going to make me sound like a hater, but I don't give a fuck. I'm currently interning in this engineering company, and my mentor asked me to organize a meeting with several other representatives from different departments. Common thing that we have interns do: organize the meetings, take the minutes, things like that. My mentor was late to the meeting and everyone was already there, so I took the initiative to brief them some information I had for the intention of the meeting. Fine. Usually it's kind of just, hey, we're waiting on them. I'm not really sure. I'll try to get a hold of them, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I know. The best way to do that would just be preface, here's what I know. After I was done explaining, the guy told me that the thing that I was explaining about was of no use and redundant. Well, The intern didn't set up the goddamn meeting. Physically, they set it up, yes, but they're not the one that requested the meeting. So who are you to tell them that they're of no use and redundant? Bullshit. And then said, do your research like what your lecturer always tells you to do before you even think of speaking. Yes, you should do your research. But if that's the information she had from her leader, that's the information she had from her leader. I've gotten wrong information from my leaders all the time, and people will come back at me. I recognize and I admit I'm still learning about things and I may be incorrect, but I felt so down and tried to keep myself from crying. After the meeting, I just kept crying and felt completely rotten. I kept thinking if I am not suited for pursuing my career in this industry. So, am I too sensitive to be in engineering? So, this is a two-parter. Did she do anything wrong to deserve that kind of reaction? Absolutely fucking not. The dude is a douchebag. However, are you too sensitive to be in engineering? In my opinion, yes. I have had men straight to my face tell me that I am ruining the project. I have had men tell me to don't get things twisted as the man next to me proceeds to say the exact same fucking thing I did. Showing, and I'm not saying crying is weakness, having a reaction to a situation like that is gonna fucking happen. But if that is your reaction to something like that in the moment, you may not be happy in engineering because shit like that, unfortunately, it shouldn't, but it does. Shit like that will happen every goddamn day. It is not something that you just get rid of because you're no longer an intern, because you're no longer learning. You could be an expert and still get told you're wrong when you know damn well you're not. So that's kind of where I'm coming from this. Like, we live in a male dominated industry. They're going to expect you, whether it's right or wrong, to function like them. So if you can't take, whether it is appropriate or not, jabs like that, you might be in the wrong place. You might end up being miserable because unfortunately shit like this happens and leaders do nothing about it because they don't see anything wrong with it. And that's where I'm coming from. Interpersonal skills, as this person in the thread says, are not something engineers are good at. And I will admit I'm not the best at it either. I actively try to be good at it, but most engineers couldn't give two shits about being good at it. So too sensitive is kind of a relative term. If this is something that you are going to experience repeatedly and you don't like experiencing it, and so much so that one instance is driving you away from the industry, you may not be a good fit for the industry. And that's just my 2 cents. But I thought that was interesting because in this case, the guy is an asshole. However, if you can't develop that thick skin to be able to deal with guys like that, then you probably are in the wrong place. All right, moving on. Am I the asshole for saying at a recruitment? Oh, I loved this one when I was doing my research. Am I the asshole for saying at a recruitment event that I am trotted out as the token girl engineer for every recruiting event? Oh, and this was written over 2 years ago. So let's remember, the people who always say this shit doesn't happen anymore, you're wrong. This one's a little bit long, so let's buckle in with our beverage. I work at a tech company. I'm one of 2 women in a technical role, and the other is very introverted and wouldn't be great at recruiting. Hi, that's me. I would refuse to do this. So every time there's a recruiting event, I get voluntold for it. It was especially frustrating and for me because my whole team is under crunch time, and a day I spend recruiting is a day I have to make up later. Another reason I often would refuse to do this kind of shit. I don't participate in company clubs and shit because of this shit. They will parade you around like little puppets because they have now controlled you. Anyways, I was at a recruiting event at a local college, and a young woman who was thinking of applying asked how the diversity in my company was. It looked good from our panel and promotional materials. Side note, almost every person of color, woman, or queer presenting person on the promo materials has either quit or never worked there in the first place. Talk about false fucking advertising, dude. Oh, shit. Why are companies so slimy? I answered honestly in front of a small group. While there are 2 women in technical roles, and as one of them, it sometimes feels like working 2 jobs. one as an engineer and one as the token girl engineer who gets pulled away from work for every photo op or recruiting event. Honestly, if you like being a trailblazer and are prepared to take on extra unspoken PR as the girl engineer, you might find a role here fulfilling. But if you prefer keeping your head down to focus on the technical side, it is easier to do that at a company where there is more gender and racial diversity. Even at a company where there's a lot of that, it still sucks. Just saying. Anyways, you can never just keep your head in the technical. Anyways, she appreciated my honesty, but the manager who was running the event told me to leave. I have a meeting with HR and my manager tomorrow. I don't think my opinion will be any news to them, as I've already told them I'm not interested in being assigned to photo ops or recruiting disproportionately because of my gender. And I've been told that it's important for me to be there to help recruit a more diverse staff since the company is trying to improve. How about not do this shit to help you improve? How about that? She appreciated my sorry, I lost where I was. I feel like they're mad that I said the quiet part out loud at the recruiting event, but it was an honest answer to the question, and I keep on being brought to these things from my unique perspective and whatnot. I think they might also see themselves as doing something good, trying to do outreach to a more diverse applicant pool, and see me as ruining that. Am I the asshole for what I said about my job? Absolutely fucking not. Because let's be real here. As someone who has had a job go completely sideways and not be anything like what they were sold, I wish someone would have been honest to me when it came to that. I wish someone would have told me I would have been the youngest member of a team by 20 years. I wish someone would have told me I would have been the only female on the team. I wish someone would have told me that when I tried to grow my career, they were only concerned with what I could do for them and not anything to do with what direction my career needed to go into. These are all things that there's a one in this list that talks about interviews and things like that. And things like that are now things that I grill companies on when I interview for new companies or even new groups, right? Even if I'm staying with the same company, if I'm going to a new group, I will do as much research as humanly possible on the company, the group. I will use some of my contacts to get answers on how things function with those groups. And even then, sometimes things can go sideways, and they have. I've done a lot of research and a lot of people were happy, but they just wasn't a good fit for me. And that is the type of honesty I would love because I hate fake fuzzy people that want to play the we're all one big happy family game. There's an update to this one too. Update after the HR meeting. I had the meeting, I recorded it with their consent, even though that was hard to come to an agreement on. That should never be hard to come to an agreement on. Companies should allow you to record everything and anything you need to, but they won't because they're slimy ass motherfuckers. I basically said that I understood that as I understood it, they had asked me to recruit because they want more female applicants and felt I could help recruit in a way the men or the team wouldn't because men are slime balls. Not all men, some are good, but if it's this small of a company, in my opinion, it's probably one of those tech bro startups. I don't know. This is just me guessing based on the information here. It's probably a tech bro startup that all of the men are frat boys and continuously act like that. Again, I could be completely wrong on that, but that's the way I read this. And that they wanted me to share my unique perspective as a woman in the field. Is that correct? My manager and HR confirmed that. I said that the role is often referred to as trailblazer, but it's also often referred to as token of a certain gender or race. But either way, the role was to publicly present the diversity of the company. And as I understood it, that was a part of my role as mandated by management to assist them in recruiting other women. I said that I was asked about my experience by a potential applicant, and I answered in what I felt was honest way, saying there are two women. I felt on top of a technical. My role as a woman is to be a trailblazer or token for other women. If the dual role appeals to you, then it would be a good fit. Fair enough. I don't know what potential issue they could have with this. I see this as similar to how recruiters say this is a very fast-paced role. If you enjoy that role, then you'd be a good fit. But if you do not, you may not. Same thing. Yeah, exactly. If you don't like fast-paced environments, you won't fit in here. Accurate. And I was wondering why I had been called to meet when other employees who would describe the role and the sort of person they want to fill the role have not been. The HR guy said that token was often seen as having a negative connotation and I was deterring applicants. Who the fuck cares? If they don't want to be that type of person, they don't want to be that type of person. That's their own prerogative. I said that fast pace is also seen as negative to people with outside obligations, for example. I didn't understand why being frank about the nature of the role was a problem. In fact, recruiters are often encouraged to be frank, but they're not, usually. It would help attract the sort of woman who would like to be the token female engineer and deter the type of woman who would not. Because I didn't want to be, is my guess, is how she got into the situation. My manager got frustrated and raised his voice to say nobody wants to be a token. And honestly, I just looked at him with a no shit face, but said that doesn't really track with your previous comments. You frequently said that I should be proud to represent the company and that I am much needed at these events. It sounded like you see it as an admirable and much appreciated role because he's bullshitting you. He wants you to think it's some promotion so he can continue to fluff and feather you and get the way that he needs to for his company without, I don't know this to be fact, but it sounds like without paying you anything extra. Despite having that been communicated to me, hearing that I should be proud and happy to represent the company as a female engineer to attract other women, but then hearing that nobody wants to be in my shoes and that if I describe my role, I will deter applicants. To hear that the company is making efforts towards diversity, however, the effort doesn't seem to continue to retention as this year 4 female employees quit, 2 were hired and then rapidly quit. This is a retention rate far lower than average. Shit. I've been in situations like that where females will quit like crazy because the men are insane. And that kind of further puts fuel on the men around the company are all frat boy dickheads. I'm frankly confused by what my role in this company is. Do you want an engineer or do you want a token? My manager snapped at me and said that I am an engineer. I said I would like my job duties to reflect that. Exactly. If I'm hired as an engineer, I don't want to go be your PR spokesperson. The HR guy said that I wouldn't be permitted to publicly represent the company more. I said, I'm very not mad about that. I feel you on that one. So I feel like my manager is pissed off, but I'm well along in the interview process with several other companies. So hopefully that won't be a problem anymore. I'm not quitting until I have a new offer signed, but I'm not too concerned if I get fired and get unemployment. Fair, but also if you get fired, it would be wrongful termination, I'm almost certain, because being a PR token girl is not in your job description. But the original question, am I the asshole for saying at a recruiting event that I am trotted as the token girl engineer for every recruitment event? Absolutely fucking not. Honestly, I feel like my co-host might have a slightly different opinion on this. Trying to put my head in hers for a second, she would be a little bit more, well, the company, you're representing the company, and maybe it just wasn't put the best way, but I I don't really give it frank and honest and open, and she's absolutely not the asshole in this situation. There is no way, in my opinion, you can even see how you get am I the asshole out of the situation. But let's see what the rest of Reddit says. Not the asshole. But that's hilarious. What are you going to say tomorrow? It's true. I am your token to be a fly on the wall. You told them you don't agree with doing this. They forced you to anyway. They caused the problem. Agreed. I've had that problem before where I've literally told management, hey, I don't agree. And then they force me to, and they wonder why I'm miserable. It's so weird why they seem to think that's a good idea. If they're trying to recruit more diverse staff, why are you still the only woman they employ that they can ask? They should have more diversity on their staff by now if they were genuine in their attention. It sounds like they're just there for show. Exactly. Nearly all the other women quit. In my 7 months here, I've seen 4 previous female employees quit. 2 women get hired and rapidly quit, and only 1 other woman gets hired recently who's still here. I already have a good idea why, but have any of them explicitly told you why they are unhappy there? What exactly are they dealing with that making them all leave? Which people on the team are causing the most grief to these women? Thank you. This is what I've been saying the entire time I'm reading this. I'm just curious now because if the problem can be solved by weeding out the most toxic people first, they may be able to retain the women who actually show up in the first place. I don't know what to tell you. Sexism, sexual harassment, and for women who are also Black or LGBT, racism and homophobia. Unfortunately, the management is the largest perpetrator. The people on our level are pretty chill. Yep, that is what I said. They're all frat boys. So they want to use you to show how woke they are when in reality, your workplace sucks majorly. Not the asshole in any capacity. I can 100% relate. People on my team are chill and value my opinion, but management and HR are blatantly sexist. This reminds me of the Dragon Lady era, but worse, honestly. But Reddit has concurred that not the asshole, and I completely agree. There is no reason this woman could ever be seen as the asshole. They made her do duties that are far beyond her job description, and they're duties that she didn't want to do. If you're going to add extra duties and no extra pay, at least make it something that the person actually wants to do. Not the asshole on that one. All right, I think this is another story coming up. My friend said engineering is an asshole rich field. Is that true? This goes back to the arrogance one. The answer is yes, it is absolutely true. But I guess in high level, their friend told them that engineering is basically full of a bunch of rich assholes. Assholes are in every field. Your friend probably works on a toxic team. Yes, assholes are in every. Yes, that is true. However, the golden boy, or maybe it was in the other thread, but there was a thread that I found. Sorry, I got distracted by something, but there was a thread that I found that was like, am engineer can in fact confirm, and then it was a whole thing of engineers don't confirm, they verify, and then we validate, and then we go find a professional engineer. And that just kind of proves the point of engineers talking about themselves in third person. We are all just assholes. Some of the older folks I worked with at smaller companies came off as assholes, but they were typically intelligent people who were happy to share their knowledge. So with those types of people, you do find a lot of those in engineering, and I will agree. With those type of people, you kind of have to just show an interest in what they are doing. I had a lot of senior technical guys that if you went to them and sat down with them and had them explain to you what they were doing and got involved in their test events and things like that, they were happy to talk to you for hours. Otherwise, they were telling you to get bent. And there are a lot of those, so I can agree to that statement. But are engineers isn't an asshole rich field? In my opinion, yes, but that's just my own opinion. I've experienced a lot of assholes, and maybe that's the piece of the industry I chose to be in. Who knows? Am I the asshole? Boss has been trying to get me to submit engineering stamps which have hallmarks of being copy and pasted. So this goes back to our ethics episode. This was posted 11 months ago. In the ethics episode, I literally named it Ethics Has Ceased to Exist. Engineers will do anything to get their designs through and approved and ready for tests so that they can meet their timelines. And this right here proves it. Let's get into it. Hi, I work at a solar construction company in the permit department and have received a direct order from leadership that in cases where the system design changes, but we have already paid for engineering stamps calculations for the project, that we are to transpose the verified stamp to the revised plan set. Basically, if something changed in the design, we're not going to go get it reapproved. We're just going to copy and paste the old stamps. So we're not going to get our changes reviewed. Bad fucking juju. I've told leadership that I'm not comfortable doing that without a letter from the engineering company stating that they stand behind us doing this because of the liability not only to the company but to myself as the legally signing applicant. Rightfully so. And leadership shouldn't take you as a whistleblower. They should go, oh, hey, that makes sense. But no. Since then, one building department in particular has continued to refuse the stamps provided because they don't specify electrical engineer with a registered electrical engineer's license number. Fine, that they can refuse it for shit like that. My boss said they were handling this directly, and weeks went by before telling me to resubmit the application. However, the building department still wouldn't accept the stamps for the same reason as before. Well, if you didn't change it, they're gonna refuse to accept it. I've had customers will reject things for just about any reason. Lo and behold, last week my boss told me new stamped plans were available and to resubmit. The stamps are there and they do say electrical engineer with a license number and expiration date. Problem is, the stamps on the plan set are digitally blurry in the way that happens when you copy and paste something and resize the object. Well, shit. Because of this, I'm almost certain that the stamps have been lifted from another project and have not been reviewed by the engineer whose seal is being used. Well, that's a dick move because if we had seals as systems engineers and my seal got lifted, my signature could get lifted, right? because we have to sign off on stuff all the time. If my signature got lifted from a different document and I didn't physically look at it, I would be pissed if something came back and my name was on it. I went to my operations manager with this information and told them I'm not comfortable submitting the project without verification from the engineer. They took the concern to the member of leadership who stated that the stamps came from an electrical engineer and that they would submit it themselves. I really don't like or trust this manager for several other reasons, and they appear to have turned other members of management against me to the point that a ready to deploy time, cost saving automation has been rejected literally without any reasoning. And I'm highly considering whether I should anonymously tip off the building department. Am I being an asshole? Absolutely not. You may not be the one, may not be the engineer who's signing off, but the management people who are trying to force you to submit things without proper review. If engineering design has changed, engineering design has changed. You have to eat that cost and go get everything reviewed and approved by the appropriate parties. That can be not only a risk liability to the company, to you, to the engineers whose signatures got lifted and maybe they didn't even know. But it also can, depending obviously with solar construction, right? In this case, you could, maybe I'm thinking solar panels. If something's wrong with the solar panels, you could set someone's house on fire or have their roof cave in, or there are so many different pieces there that possibly could impact, that are a huge liability if the design changed in such a way that it didn't get reviewed and it needed to be. So, absolutely not the asshole here, in my opinion. Those management and engineering management, I'm assuming, is who you're talking to because you're getting engineering stamps. They're ethically not just great, that is completely unethical in the engineering world. And I see it happening more and more nowadays where we're trying to minimize reviews and push things through. But reviews are the one thing you shouldn't be minimizing. You can improve them and make them quicker and less time inclusive, sure. But that is the one thing you shouldn't be skimping on in today's day and age. Someone commented, this is not only unethical and probably illegal, it is dangerous. I'd ask the engineering firm if they really stamped that drawing, maybe send the engineer a question about that drawing. Sometimes I ask myself, would I feel stupid? If I know I should do something and I don't and it goes wrong, I feel stupid for knowing and not acting. Agreed. It's completely unethical. There is no reason this should be happening, but it is. And my co-host gave me a little shit for saying that ethics has ceased to exist, but this is the kind of shit that I was talking about. Engineers are out here trying to lift stamps and lift signatures so that they don't have to go get it reviewed properly and signed off properly. And this was only 11 months ago. How many more incidents have happened because leadership wants to meet impossible deadlines or sign themselves up for things that aren't quite doable? And now they want to cut corners reviews. It is absolutely insane. Not the asshole here, and Reddit seems to agree because the stamp on this is not the asshole, but how the fuck do we solve this problem? If we've got people in leadership across the board in all of these industries that are willing to pull shit like this, that is dangerous and unethical and a liability to basically all involved, how do we fix this? Why have we got into an industry that's so slimy and willing to cut corners? Where did this come from? Other than really tight deadlines, which I know are a huge problem. However, you're running up against your own clock at certain points. How do we fix this? Why do we have these types of people up in leadership that are willing to put everybody involved at risk? I don't know. But Reddit votes not the asshole. I vote not the asshole. And honestly, if you think this person is the asshole for refusing to do something their boss said, you need to get out of the workforce because this is a risk to us all. And the fact that no one was backing this person up is insane. All right. Hopefully the next one's a little less depressing. Oh, well, I pulled up one yesterday and apparently it has been removed. But the topic was horrible at math and coding, but want to get into ISC. And it was basically just a description of, can I be an engineer even though I'm horrible at math and coding? And the answer is yes, technically speaking. If you can make it through school, getting into certain areas of engineering, you wouldn't have to use either of those two things. And you can be pretty good at your job being completely useless. Nowadays, people are looking for butts in seats and not necessarily people who are talented. And that's unfortunate because we need talent. And finding middle level talent is really hard. But if you can build up to that with whatever place that you're working at, you can absolutely get into it. Just because you're not a perfect student doesn't mean you won't be good in the workforce. And I said that a little bit earlier. I wasn't a perfect student, but I'm a top performer at work. So there's a little insight to just because you're not good at school doesn't mean you're not necessarily going to be good as an engineer. Oh, this is the thread that I was talking about. Why do so many people on here hate on engineers? I noticed a lot of comments hating on engineers, saying the amount of cockiness in this thread is appalling, and other similar sentiments. Maybe other comments got downvoted to hell, but I only saw one comment that was a bit rude from an engineer. The majority of comments I could read were all about how engineers are all cocky douches who think they know everything about getting their BS in whatever. From my experience, engineers tend to be slightly socially awkward, but generally friendly and nice people. And even engineers I know have had trouble finding a job in this market. He's not wrong. Or OP, I don't know. He's not wrong there. Sure, even though this was written 12 years ago, it fits now. Sure, they may be a bigger demand for engineering positions in this high tech world than for something like history, but lots of positions require experience that fresh graduates might not have or have enough of. Maybe some of you have been around too many douchebags, but I've always had great engineer friends. TLDR, engineers aren't generally dicks. Feel free to rant about your major or whatever, too. And then comes the most ingenious thread ever. Why do so many people on here hate engineers? Because a lot of people on here are engineers and they hate themselves. Valid. I am engineer and I can confirm this. Engineers verify, not confirm. And then we validate. Then we find a professional engineer to approve. That is the best thread I have ever seen because it is just engineering humor on top of, yes, we all are self-deprecating assholes and we're on here and we also hate ourselves. Just mentality. There's a lot of hate for engineers, and it's not just on Reddit. There's a lot of hate for engineers because of what I've previously said. We are elitists. Some people have claimed that engineers are assholes because they're making up for the fact that they were never the sports stars and now they're the ones making the big money, so they think they're these elitists out there. I could go on for days about why I think engineers are assholes, but we get a lot of hate because we act like we know everything. And we think we're tough shit because we made it through engineering school and calculus is so hard and I would like to see you do my degree. And we suffered through college all miserable. Some of us probably on substances. Who knows? But in my opinion, we're all just functioning alcoholics that hate ourselves. Not all of us, but you know what I mean. We get a lot of hate because we deserve it. And I can include myself in this category sometimes. I also could claim that sometimes I do deserve to get the hate that I do from my husband because my husband is in construction, like I've said in the past, and he loves to hate on engineers. So I definitely get humbled being married to someone who can't stand most people in my industry. Anyways, I thought I would share that little thread because it made me laugh when I saw it last night, pulling up all this research. Does anyone else dislike calling themselves an engineer when asked about what you do for a living? All the fucking time. And I would love to say this was because of imposter syndrome, but it's not. I used to take a lot of pride in it, but the last year or two, I feel like it's such a humble brag. I turned to describing what product equipment I work with instead of giving my title out at the question. Anyone else feel the same, or is it just my shitty imposter syndrome? For me, it's not imposter syndrome. For me, it's because of the fact that engineers will get the side eye. Oh, you're one of those kind of thing. And I don't want to be seen like that. I want people to judge me for me. And can I be a prick sometimes? Yes, but I don't want people to judge me prematurely because of my job title. And I have had people do that in the past, and I'd rather just not. I don't consider being an engineer impressive. I went to school, I got a degree, I got a job. It's the extent of what I did. It's not some impressive feat that should be praised. I did the same thing anybody else did. I have cousins that are going to med school and doing amazing things in the process as well. They're smart cookies. They're the cool ones. And they have a lot more schooling than I ever went to. Being an engineer is not that cool, in my opinion. There's no reason for us to act like elitist pricks. We're not some high demand We are not gods of the tech world. We're not gods of STEM. I read somewhere in one of these threads that people consider engineers the business majors of STEM. And if you've ever watched Big Bang Theory and saw how Wolowitz was treated by the other scientists, I fits. And I don't feel like we should inflate our egos the way that we do, because we're not some tough shit elitists. We're not the gods of the tech world, like I said. I don't like calling myself an engineer. I don't really like talking about my job in general. Um, Perspective of other people that I'm just now meeting or interacting with, outside of the engineering bubble, because obviously we talk about being engineers on this podcast, but that's because we started it as two engineers. This whole podcast is about being an engineer. But in the general rule of thumb outside of this podcast, I don't talk about being an engineer. I really don't talk about engineering things, unless you count talking about my 3D printer that I'm using solely for cosplay stuff. So, realistically speaking, I agree. I don't know if anybody else out there, you just like calling yourself an engineer, or you love touting being an engineer. I don't know. Drop some stories in the comments about why or why not you enjoy calling yourself an engineer. Because I don't. I will avoid talking about what I do for work as much as humanly possible. I'm told I will avoid talking to new people in general, but at minimum, I will avoid talking about what I do for work, because it's just not that interesting to me. I don't think I'm that cool of a person when it comes to that side of my life. All right. And this is the one that I was talking about earlier about job interviews. Am I the asshole for criticizing how my girlfriend takes job interviews? She basically interviews them, and I feel like she isn't taking it seriously. Reddit has deemed this person as an asshole, just as a heads up. Also, this one is extremely long, so I'm going to take a little sip of my caffeinated beverage, and then we can get going. My girlfriend is at a job she can't do remotely, and we're planning to move to another state together. So she's job hunting right now. Her first interview, she had a call with a top company whose recruiter had messaged her on LinkedIn. I was expecting her to treat it normally, but she spent an hour grilling the company on its engineering practices, then withdrew her application. In the next few calls with companies she had, she basically grilled them all and decided against moving forward with 4 of the 6. I told her around then that I feel like she's making a mistake being so picky, and she's going to ruin her reputation in the industry if she's going around taking interviews and cutting the process off early. She said she wasn't making any enemies. Hell, the companies she dropped had been emailing and calling constantly, wanting her to bring her in for another interview or asking her to reconsider. If anything, she was a hotter commodity. I feel like she was probably still hurting her reputation long term, even if her little power play was working for a bit. She said it wasn't a power play, it was professional. She just didn't want to waste anyone's time. At the next interview, I overheard started a big argument. One of her final 2 companies had her taking a Zoom interview, and she was laughing it up with an interviewer, and he was telling her the story about how he and his coworkers fell off a barge into the river working on a project. And she was just like, wait, they had y'all doing that, not tied off to anything? Look, as funny as that is, that's honestly kind of fucked up. They put y'all in danger in like that. I'm honestly going to have to withdraw my application. She got off the phone and said, damn, people really tell on themselves if you just listen and smile. Did you hear that shit? And I said that I thought she ended it a little prematurely, like didn't ask if they changed anything there, just ended the call. I said it felt like she was trying to delay getting a new job. Was she getting cold feet or something? She said, no, this is literally how people at her level interview. She was serious about the interview process, and she wasn't interested in walking into a shit show. Valid. I said that was BS and she was sabotaging herself on purpose, basically haranguing the companies who want to hire her on the phone. And she was like, why do they keep coming back for more then? Like, critical, but I'm not wrong and they know it. We had this big fight where she insisted that anyone who was at her level of a career interviewed by interviewing companies to see whether they were worth their time, just as much as the other way around. And I said that was BS. She got mad I was telling her about her own career, and she said she knew better. Am I the asshole for arguing with my girlfriend about her interviews? I feel like she's dragging her feet, and she says she's interviewing normally for her field. Dude, you're the fucking asshole. It's her career. And if there's one thing, I went through this a little bit kind of with my husband. Construction is a completely different world than the corporate life that I live. he can tell a company to fuck off and 2 weeks later say, actually, I'm okay. I want to take that job. He can say he's going to take a job and then back out of it the day of, and they'll still want to hire him if he needs an open spot a year later. He can leave a company, torch it on his way out, and they'll still rehire him without giving a 2 weeks notice, anything like that. The construction world is wild and he's a hot commodity. And I had to slowly start to understand that what he was doing with his career and how he was interviewing and moving around and jumping from company to company was kind of normal in his line of work. And I just kind of backed out and stopped really giving my opinion because it's not my place to give my opinion. And he does the same with me. I tend, not always, but I tend to shift around between group to group in year blocks. I don't really stay more than a year and a half in any one given place, partially because I get bored out of my mind. It's just the way I am, unfortunately. So he always thought it was kind of funny that I jump from program to program and that I kind of have the grass is always greener mentality. But he slowly started learning why I do what I do and kind of off of that. To the actual point of how this individual was interviewing, that's really standard and normal. I've learned about what I like and what I don't like in specific groups and specific leadership styles and things like that, I will grill, even if I'm working for the same exact company, I will grill the group I'm going to go work for. I'm going to go get as much information on the leaders that I'm going to be working under as I can. Hopefully, I know someone who's worked under them or is currently working under them before I join them. So that I know exactly what I'm getting myself into and I don't walk into a shit show. That was a large problem with what happened to me with Dragon Lady and what happened to my co-host with Dragon Lady as well. What was given to us in the interview process and the first couple months even was not what happened once the new year started. I started with that group in July of a year. And by January of the next year, everything that I was told in my interview had completely changed, and all of the leadership's personalities had completely changed. Their personalities changed towards me because I was pushing back. I was giving them clear, similar to the HR one that we just talked about. I was giving them clear, I am not about this. I did not sign up for this. My contract didn't say this when I came in. Obviously, in some places, they will make your contract super fluid so they can do and so they can do whatever they want and basically own your ass. But you're interviewing for a new company and you know nothing about these people, you're going to try and grill the shit out of them so that you don't walk into a shit show. And I completely get that. So this dude, as someone in the comments putting it, mansplaining how to interview for her own jobs and assuming that she was getting cold feet because of it is absolute bullshit. So James Reddit is in agreement that this dude is the asshole. And this is my favorite comment. People seem to think that they are lucky to get a job. No, mate, it's a transaction and we both need to be satisfied. 100%. I work in an engineering field, and at the moment, you cannot get good mid-level engineers to save your life. Absolutely, I have 3 to 4 LinkedIn recruiters messaging me on a weekly basis. My team is hiring at the moment. We're struggling for applicants, which means she absolutely is a hot commodity. Absolutely. Not only is it hard to get good mid-level engineers right now, of those mid-level engineers, how many of them are female? Almost none. And so companies are going to be looking at that. Well, whether they should or shouldn't when it comes to hiring people, they are going to be looking at their diversity ratios. It's just they're going to have to. So if the companies are basically hiring her as a diversity hire rather than she's a good fit for that particular role, that could be a shit show, whether you were so happy with how the company functions or not. And grilling companies on their engineering practices is a good thing. How do you function? Are you moving? And for me, one of the big questions are, what does your digital transformation plan look like? Are you at the forefront of it? Are you behind? Are you thinking about it? Is there any plan or scope to be able to do these things? Because if they're not doing that, I'm not interested. So that is, dude's completely the asshole. It's none of his business. if they as a couple want to talk about her interviews or things like that, just as a conversation topic, sure, fine, whatever. It's none of your business to give advice. And as someone who went through this in my marriage, just it's a big decision like moving states or longer hours or adding weekends or something like that, then obviously that's a conversation you want to have with your significant other. No duh. And that's a conversation I would have in my marriage. But if it's simply just interviewing for a new job and you're not changing anything that you and your spouse agreed upon slash something that would impact your spouse or significant other, then it doesn't fucking matter to them and you're the asshole. So that is that one. And last but not least, I think this is a good topic because this is directly related to the Dragon Lady situation and how I, as a leader and engineering manager, would have handled the situation. But it just proves that more and more people have these problems. And it's not just us. Obviously, we knew it wasn't just us that had these problems. Toxic workplaces and toxic bosses are common across the board. But why are they so common is the question I have for the world. Anyways, leads engineering managers. Have you ever had an engineer that was really good at delivering but rude, toxic to others? How did you handle it? I have been in this situation more than once. I have had, funny enough, though, in most of the situations, people just think that they're really good at delivering and they were rude and toxic. They weren't actually good at their jobs. Because I have two people in mind, one of which we've talked about a lot, Tweedledum, on the podcast. And then another is another group that I worked with that had a similar guy that just wanted to rule the kingdom, but had no idea how to rule the kingdom. Never spent enough time in the weeds actually doing the job to know how to rule the job. But read the description on this one. Assuming this is an acceptable question for this sub, as it's more people management, this isn't just your standard good with code, bad with people techie. Unapproachable, constantly annoyed, anyone is bothering them, condescending and rude quite often, very moody, hates mentoring, no real interest in others succeeding, but is a total workaholic and generally delivers very well. Suspect, they don't want competition and enjoy being the go-to dev. Knowledge gatekeeper, won't document, only they know X process, how Y works. Context, I inherited this dev and team, never would have put this person in a lead role. Okay, so part one here is this person is in a lead role. It doesn't sound like they should be. So rather than firing them off the bat, in my opinion, what I would do is pull them off of that lead and have them replaced as the lead, but keep them on as the dev, right? I've worked with plenty of people in the past that are not the best interpersonal skill type people, but they are very good at what they're doing technically, and their performance is fantastic. To me, this is a me, myself, and I opinion. Obviously, I know a lot of companies would disagree with me, and a lot of other managers probably would disagree with me. If I hired you specifically for technical delivery, I really don't care how you interact with people. If you deliver on that technical product I hired you for, and I understood, obviously, this person inherited this team, but in my, like, if I was a lead who had to deal with this person, I understood that you are not great at the mentoring because not everyone's meant to be a mentor. Not everyone's meant to be a leader. Not really everyone's meant. Some people you want to just put them in a corner and let them do their thing. To some people, I could be this person. Although I, personally speaking, I do enjoy training new people and I will document. I don't gatekeep, but people have to come to me. They have to come and ask questions. So I'm not necessarily that condescending, but to some people, they think I am. However, if I was dealing with this person, rather than straight out fire them from the beginning, I would try to just pull them off of the people focused position that would have to do with training new members and documenting and things like that, being responsible for all of that, and kind of just let them be the technical focus that they seem to want to be. If that doesn't work and they're still kind of that unapproachable, constantly condescending and rude, then maybe you work with HR to work on a performance improvement plan, or you never know. Not saying that this is an excuse to be rude or condescending, but as someone who is not the best socially, it could be something that you don't understand. So maybe try to have more of a one-on-one environment with that type of person and be leading with empathy, for lack of a better way of putting it, because not everyone communicates the same way that you think they should. And I have a real kind of soft spot for people like this, because while I have been able to kind of force myself into positions that I am very people focused and leading people and things like that, I would much rather, in most cases, just be this type of person. Not necessarily condescending and rude, but I would rather just be left alone and let me do my job, put my head down, be very technical. I enjoy training new people, but only if they are interested in being trained and showing a genuine interest in coming to me with questions and things like that. I don't want to train people that don't want to be there. And that's where my line comes in all of this. But I have a soft spot because I can be perceived as this type of person. So working with them is sometimes learning what they need from you to not work against you. While I don't know this situation, I do know this type of person. And sometimes the situation is just putting them in a corner and not and letting them just deliver on the things that they need to deliver on rather than working with teams of people. And as an engineer, that can be hard. If you prefer to work solo rather than in teams of people, engineering is a very collaborative industry and you almost always are going to have to work with other people. I wouldn't immediately assume this person is toxic though. Again, I'm in this situation, but the way the description reads, it seems like it might be more of a just not good in a lead role situation, more so than just completely toxic and needs to be fired. The other question that comes to mind when I look at this, has this been a topic of conversation with this person before? Have you tried to address the behaviors or ask them to step up to do mentoring? If they hate it, why are you asking them to do it? And that's kind of I want to build careers that people enjoy. If I'm building someone as a manager, I want to build something that you enjoy. I don't want to force you to do a bunch of things that you don't want to do. This rarely ended up being firing this individual, but it sounds like, from what I'm seeing in the comments, that the original poster is a terrible team lead and just treats people like ass. So realistically, the thread is a little wild. Hold on. I just saw an interesting part of the thread. People will often rise to the occasion and fill the gap. Maybe things take longer, but people are happier. See, that is from the OP. I completely disagree, because for instance, with the team that I worked with, the situation got so toxic that I had to leave. My team was then forced to rise to the occasion and fill the gap with no additional notifications, no additional help. And that proved to be true. Like, we assumed that was going to be the case when I left, because I'm friends with my team. They're going to be forced into rising to the occasion and filling the gaps. However, what we didn't assume is that the leadership would then proceed to give them no extra help, but also no extra praise or guidance or help when it came to their performance reviews, right? Both of them were performing way beyond their years, because I was their lead. So obviously I was ranked higher than them in the typical hierarchy. And they were then forced to fill the position that I was holding on top of the position that they were hired for. So leadership giving them no extra help, I wouldn't necessarily say that it'll make people happier. And in today's day and age, a lot of the times there is no take longer. You will have to do the same amount of work in the same amount of time, if not less time, depending on the situation, with half the amount of people, because you've driven off all these toxic, fired all these toxic people to cut your cancers. While I don't disagree with getting rid of toxic people if they truly are toxic to the team and making the team fail, making others fill the gap and rise to the occasion isn't the answer either. Then someone said it's analogous. I don't know why I can't say that word. To a sports team having a superstar player, everyone thinks getting rid of the star player will be a disaster. Actually, what happens is that player has been stopping everyone else from shining and fulfilling their potential. You'll end up with a team of high performers instead of one rock star engineer who everyone looks to and a bunch of sidekicks. So, from that perspective, I can agree, but at the same time, not. Yes, engineering teams are teams. However, you still have team leads that fill roles that your younger engineers are not ready to fill, should not be filling due to pay gaps, There are a million reasons you shouldn't be forcing the rest of your team to take up the work of someone. I'm not saying don't get rid of the toxic person, but forcing your team to take up that extra work is not the answer, because you're going to have a bunch more disgruntled employees that might turn into that toxic person. Because sometimes I have gotten to the point of, I don't want to train anybody. I don't want, because there was no benefit. And whether people want to say it or not, you're at a job for the transaction. You're at a job for the paycheck. If you take on all of this extra work and there's no benefit to it, then why keep doing it? So there is a little bit of that to be said in this conversation. Are they actually rude and condescending and unwilling to help other people and unwilling to document? Or are they just wanting to get compensated for the extra job pieces that they're now having to do if it wasn't a part of their original description? So I don't know. A lot of people are saying that the OP did the right thing and that cutting the toxic fat is a good idea. And I, to some extent, I don't disagree, because I had HR or any other teams at the company I work for done something about Tweedledum and Dragon Lady and their directions in life, I maybe would have stayed at the job that I was at. That's a big maybe. The likelihood is probably not, because firing one person versus firing the manager are two different things, and they're never going to fire a manager, in my opinion. But that turnover rate is so high because of a manager, and companies can't seem to see it sometimes. So I can see how the answer in the solution would be fire them, move them to a different team, cut them off, whatever it is. However, I would suggest, and maybe they have and they just didn't put it in the post, trying to actually work with this individual before just going straight to cutting, because you never know. It could be a struggle for them. And just the role they're in is not the right role. That doesn't mean you don't have a role for them on the program that will allow them to keep delivering for you, because they obviously enjoy the technical work. It might just be some of the social politics, for lack of a better way of putting it, that they don't enjoy, and they'd rather just be in a corner and not so much team focused. And again, hard as an engineer, but not impossible. So that being said, those were some fun Am I the Asshole engineering stories, and I always just find it fun that I can find threads sometimes without actually trying to look for them that agree with my opinion about engineers and this industry and where everything's going. But hopefully, knock on wood, I have my co-host back, because I'm starting to think that YouTube may believe that I have made up this co-host, because we separated our YouTube and I didn't bring over all of the other previous episodes when I started the new YouTube. I just started fresh from the episode that I recorded, and all of the shorts have been just me lately. So it kind of looks like on our YouTube channel that the podcast is just me, and I keep talking about this mysterious co-host that doesn't seem to exist. But I promise you, those of you who've been around for a while obviously know that she exists, but she will be back eventually. Hopefully next week will be when we get to talk about the makeup and chick who got denied from a VP job because of not wearing it, which is ironic because I'm actually wearing it this week. But that being said, as always, if you enjoy this content, please go out and rate us, but also follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Engineering Chaos Pod. If you need help with your health and fitness goals, please reach out to me at It's Coach KC. I will be happy to help you in any way, shape, or form that I can. And I have a cosplay account, KC Chaos something, I don't know. But if you want to interact with us, we also have a Discord that I usually forget to link. But if I linked it this time, it's in the show notes below. Yeah. So all this week, my lovely Chaos Gremlins, and I hopefully will have my co-host back soon. So goodbye.